Hello, and welcome back to Polyglots for the week. This week we're talking about using your less fluent languages and when you have to go and use those in a conversation with a native speaker and what you can do to sort of improve, the experience, try and communicate better. Number one, I think this is pretty obvious, but just being a good listener, both when a native speaker is speaking to you and when they're speaking to someone else in that language, just focusing on what they're saying and trying to pick out individual words. Especially when you're new to a language, you're not going to get every single word, but you'll be able to understand and learn new words from the context that it's in the sentence. So, if you don't know the word for car, but the native speaker is talking to you about their new car, and you keep hearing this word car in the middle of all these sentences, you can learn a new word that way and pick it up and then use it yourself when you speak back to them. So just focus and listen. I think that's pretty evident though. So, second, I think it's important when you first learn a new language to have set phrases set up in your mind, especially for this kind of situation. Can you speak more slowly, please? Because I think a lot of the times the biggest problem with speaking with a native speaker is that they'll speak too quickly. I know when I was less good at French, the problem sometimes would be that they'd be speaking too quickly. I'd know all the words, all the individual words that they were saying, but they'd speak so quickly that it would just all blend into each other and I'd have no idea what they were saying. So a good phrase to know is just, can you speak more slowly? And, once they do that, it'll become easier. And I think it's also important in general to know other important phrases. My examples are always, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, where are the bathrooms, and things like that. But that's not so relevant to this. But, 3, when you're using a less well-used, a language that you're not as fluent in, that you've only just begun, know that being clear is a lot more important than speaking quickly, because I feel like a lot of times, and this was a problem, it still is, for me, and a lot of other language learners, is that people tend to, because they want to sound good, they'll try to speak faster, but they'll mess up more, or they'll just sound bad. They'll just and it won't sound good to the native speaker, and maybe they won't understand you. So clearness is more important than speed. If you're speaking a language that you're not quite as good at and you can't handle speaking it that fast, don't stress about it. As long as you're going at a nice, decent, speaking steadily, but not giving in pauses. That's also a big problem. Sometimes when people don't speak a language, they'll say the beginning of a sentence, and then the big pause will distract the native speaker, and that's not good either. But you don't have to speak at the speed of light either. Just a nice, decent, trotting pace is enough to get your information across and have the other person understand you. Don't worry about making it sound really good until you've got a really good vocab down and you're really set. That'll come on its own too. For hand motions, I think are also really helpful when you don't speak a language very well, or you don't speak a language at all. Hand motions are always helpful. You do have to be a little careful, because sometimes, different signs are bad in another country, like, this is bad, I think in France, and, like, other things are also bad in other places, but as long as they're a little more, like adding to what you're trying to say, so, like, you want to say over there, you can just point or something, or just if you're, like, thinking of an object in your head, you kind of just visualize it, and I think that does help a lot, because it's saying to the native speaker that you're thinking, you're really trying hard to come up with a word here, and that, like, it can also help for understanding once they get what you're trying to say. So yeah, I think that helps a lot as well, just being engaging and not being shy, really, just not being afraid to do crazy hand motions and try to get your meaning across in the best way possible. And then, is this 5? I'm losing track of the numbers, but whatever. You can also, if you forget the name of something, and like Ben mentioned something like this, if you forget how to say a word, so let's say you're trying to say, oh, I'm really happy today, and you forget the word for happy, you can say, oh, I'm really not sad today. You just kind of mention the opposite and say, oh, I'm not that. Or you can describe the thing that you're trying to say. So, you know, if you're trying to say, where's the pencil, or can you give me a pencil, you can say, can you give me the writing thing you use to write, and that helps a lot too, just going around, and then the native speaker will most likely tell you, oh, a pencil, and you'll learn new words out of that. And then next, it helps a lot if you already speak another language. If you do, try to use that if they're similar. So romantic languages, if you speak another romantic language, use that when you get stuck. You know, my motto always with French and Italian is that if I can't think of a word, I'll just say it in Spanish with a French accent or an Italian accent, and sometimes that works. Like this one time, I was in French 1, and we were taking a test, and the word sad, we had to come up with the word sad, and the teacher hadn't taught us that, she forgot, and like I had no idea what the word sad was at the time, so I just wrote it in Spanish, and I was the only person in the entire class to get it right, because triste and triste are spelled the same way. So if you speak a language that's similar, use that. If you get stuck and you really can't come up with anything else, it can help. Especially in writing, because a lot of times the writing is similar, but the pronunciation is different. And finally, if you go traveling, always take a dictionary with you. It's not too good if it, to spontaneously take out and come up with sentences, but if you're having this conversation and you really, really can't come up with a word, you can take out a dictionary and use it. Or if it's a word that's consistently coming up and you just never know how to say it, you can look it up again. You know, if it's a word that's on a sign consistently and it seems important, you can look it up in the dictionary and figure it out. So, yeah, okay. Those are all of the tips that I had. Once again, this video is way longer than I meant it to be, but oh well. Alright. I'll see you guys next week, I suppose. Bye.